Hi, everyone. I'm going to be covering four main things today. I'm going to be talking about how does AI sit within the cloud security landscape and within the challenge. What is that landscape? What does that look like? How can AI be used to secure the cloud? And then finally, I'm going to be chatting about taking back the attacker's mindset. But who wants to start with statistics? Let's start with some children's literature first. I really love this quote from the author behind The Little Prince. One, because he's a phenomenal man, but because I think this is the reality of AI. AI is going to be an accelerator of both our own internal processes as well as the external threat landscape. It isn't inherently a solution to our problems. It's not also inherently a threat. As with all things, it is an accelerator. And I wanted to chat about that acceleration today in the context of cloud security. So to get going, well, what is the challenge? Naturally, it's divided into how is AI going to fuel the external threat landscape? And then how can we build better people, processes, and technology? I would love to sit here, SentinelOne as a vendor, to say, hey, technology is going to be the be-all and end-all. It's going to solve all your problems. The reality is people and processes is where the rubber meets the road of cloud security. Now, we've got the challenge of innovation, where organizations are looking to adopt more and more AI technology, as well as just adopt cloud technology. And then we've got the classic challenge of, is security going to slow down that innovation or allow them to run at pace? So even within the internal landscape, there's a challenge of how do you enable AI innovation, enable cloud innovation as well. Now let's chat about cloud threats on the rise. There is an increasing number of cloud breaches. There's a number of really phenomenal places where you can go to see this rise, so I won't quote one in particular. There's an increase in sophistication in cloud attacks that we're seeing. I love to talk about MITRE. If you look at the MITRE attack techniques, it's gone from 50 to 61 as just the major headings. So we're seeing a real increase in the complexity of attacks, as well as we're seeing, partially because of AI, a lowered barrier to entry for who is able to build attacks that are targeting cloud environments. So we're seeing increase in the use of AI and increased automation. We're seeing a lot of bots that are doing credential stuffing, credential harvesting. We're seeing the autonomous exploitation of vulnerabilities. ChatGPT is being used to improve phishing and smishing. We're seeing fraud GPT. We're seeing worm GPT used explicitly to build malware. And I want to talk about that AI-powered malware specifically. And I want to go through, first off, 3 examples of AI-powered attacks that didn't quite pass the bar, but that may in the future. PassGANs, this is Generative Adversarial Network Password Checker, as well as PCFG, which I always hate saying, but I should probably, probabilistic. It's a terrible word to pronounce when you're up on stage. Probabilistic context-free grammar crackers. This is AI-driven password crackers that are actually now looking at how can they adopt that for cloud credentials as well. The reality, however, is that these tools, within the last few years, haven't actually been the most effective way to crack credentials and to guess passwords. They're actually not at the speed that they need to be at, but I think we will see them come at speed within the next few years. So this is a great example to start off with of AI-powered attacks that aren't actually quite there yet, but that likely will be in the years ahead. Malgan is another great example. So another generative adversarial network approach to creating malware. There was a great paper on this in 2017 where it had something like a 95% hit rate of beating the endpoint detection and response technologies of the day. It was redone, that paper, with the same people in 2022. They started adding an end-form approach to how they could generate new ideas for the malware, and they got between an 88.6 to 100% pass rate. So we're seeing growing efficacy, but we're not seeing much of this in the wild. But as AI is democratizing access, as there is wider adoption of AI, I think we're going to see this return with a vengeance. And then finally, DeepLocker is an ages-old POC, which is a deep neural network malware from IBM of, hey, we're not going to execute until we see the right face, for example, and the right set of words spoken on a Zoom call, for example, until that unlocks itself and transforms into the nature of the malware that is malicious. But again, this is more about these haven't really worked. These haven't made it into the wild, but they might. I want to contrast that with, well, what's the reality of a lot of cloud attacks? We're seeing an increase in fileless attacks. a 14x increase if you believe some industry reporting. We're seeing wipers and malware with Linux variants. So Swift Slicer is a wiper written in Go. It's used largely in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. If we were to look at ransomware, maybe like Icefire is a great example, or Black Cat's Alpha V, which is written in Rust, so it targets Linux environments, and we've seen that used to encrypt cloud object storage and others. Obviously, there's container-specific attacks, like attacking from mounting the file system or escaping. We see crypto mining, a lot of that, and that automation of, not only are we going to automate the finding of OS and app level vulnerabilities, but we're going to automate the attacks on those. And then there's Black Mamba. Now, again, this is another POC. This one is from last year, I believe, but this is actually leveraging ChatGPT in real time to assist in malware polymorphism. Now, the reason why I think that's interesting is because polymorphism kind of never really took off as a threat. It sounds super catchy, malware rewriting itself in real time, but the reality is that it didn't really have much of an impact. This POC showcased that given the current power of AI, polymorphism now might have some real teeth. And so I'm expecting this as a threat landscape to increase. I don't quite have time to cover all of the DevOps pipeline threats that do target cloud environments, but I do want to highlight where AI pops up within these. Second on the left here, I've got the use of non-standard languages. We're seeing adversaries and threat actors hiding in a language they know isn't going to be scanned by SAST or DAST tools. And we're seeing evidence that more and more they're leveraging generative AI to transform between languages. To say, hey, we've got something and we want to put it in a different language. This is how we want to do that. And now we're going to hide that in the compile. So we're seeing AI in use there. And then finally, at the end, in terms of making this real, we've heard a lot today about deepfakes. We've heard a lot about smishing and phishing, and ChatGPT writing up emails to help people with that sort of business email compromise threat angle. We're seeing evidence that the Lazarus Group, which is North Korean state-sponsored crypto theft far and wide, they took in about 230 million across 4 attacks last year, which is a fairly decent rate of return, I'd say, for 4 campaigns. We're seeing evidence that they're leveraging these tools to successfully pretend that they're separate identities. So there is one use case, this is the bottom right that I'm now talking about, where someone pretended that they were the head of Binance software engineering so that they could reach out and perform job interviews. Now that job interview was successful. They said, hey, developer, can you please build a hello world for us, but can use this little bit of code from our repo? Unfortunately, he used his work laptop. Now, this developer had no access to production machines, but they were able to scrape his Chrome creds, get to GitHub, get to Docker Hub, and then do internal image implant on Docker Hub. So they're able to insert themselves within a legacy application, wait for it to spin up. Then they had some reverse shells that they'd really specifically built to say, hey, we know exactly what we're going to do because we've mapped the understanding of the business logic. They tested 1 Ethereum, went through. Next transaction was 43 million US. But this starts with AI phishing and a lure. So I just wanted to flag that as how AI finds itself within these attacks. And then I did want to briefly talk about cloud misconfigurations, not because of where AI is on the threat landscape, but where AI can be used as part of the defense. We still have quite an outdated understanding of cloud misconfigurations. I think because we see headlines of, hey, there's cloud object storage, public and unencrypted. The reality is that it's not just about what gaps and windows are we leaving open for threat actors to come in, but what are they changing within the middle of an attack campaign? Are they granting additional privileges? Are they opening up a database to allow for snapshots? Are they removing or adding MFA? And so now there's this separate challenge where it's not just about finding misconfigurations, it's what misconfigurations represent compromise artifacts. How do we hunt for a cloud lol bin, a living off of the land tool? If someone's going to be using the AWS CLI utility to modify AWS services in real time, how can I hunt for that? The reality is that a lot of the cloud attacks don't sit neatly into those 3 buckets that I've just presented. The reality is that a lot of the modern attacks combine these tactics and techniques. And really, I think this is where the opportunity for AI-powered defense comes into play, is how can I understand correlation between the health of my Kubernetes cluster, the health of my code, real-time activity, and the health of my cloud services, and the nature of what's going on across my privileges and my permissions and my credentials. Hunting across that, making judgments across that, I think that's where we're going to see the power of AI. Now, it's worth saying that there is a time and a place for machines. There's a few things that humans are going to do. Ethics is underlined here. I'm not sure I particularly agree that we should always count on humans for ethics, but the reality is that people are always going to be good at knowing your own internal organization, the nature of your architecture, the nature of what's sensitive. Security professionals know what safe looks like. They know what dangerous looks like, but they cannot understand data at scale. And that's where we need to leverage on machines. If we've got a really wide set of data, we need machine learning to look for that, for pattern matching, for summarization, for generalization, and crucially for hypothesis testing. And this is where I've got 7 minutes to go, but that's where I'm going to wrap up, just so you guys see into the future a little bit. At SentinelOne, I won't go into this in too much detail because no one likes a vendor talking about themselves, but obviously we use a variety of AI and ML engines. We've got supervised learning, over 1 billion samples to understand the nature of a file before it executes, which is our static AI. We've got unsupervised engines that look at the nature of execution as it happens. So how can you understand the nature of something before it detonates, through detonation, through time? How can you understand via process linking whether or not something is malicious? Understanding the nature of a thing, understanding the activity of a thing. Something that I quite like up there is entropy. I never get a chance to talk about physics ideas within a cloud security conversation, but looking at the inherent level of chaos within the code to understand whether or not something has malicious intent, I think that's incredibly cool, but something you need an AI engine to perform on your behalf. But this is all classic, unsupervised, supervised, online, offline, AI and ML. Let's chat about Gen AI. I won't chat about this in too much detail because I think right up next, or the one afterwards, we've got a phenomenal conversation happening on stage about the possibilities of Gen AI for security. But I think there's a massive opportunity for detection that Gen AI is going to help us with. For example, anytime I see anyone messing or creating any kind of misconfiguration, whether it's in AWS, in Azure, or GCP, I would love to add a wildcard after it. If I see someone removing MFA, any change afterwards that is related to a misconfiguration, like changing RDS or changing encryption or creating policies or opening a new security group and messing around, it's going to take me 3 weeks if I sit down there and create all the wildcard options. But if I'm able to use Gen AI to create that, that's going to speed up my time frame. Obviously, there's a massive benefit in self-documentation and in prediction and remediation. Now, something that we've done is we've launched an AI security analyst. There's a lot of security vendors talking about AI security analysts, so I won't go into this in too much detail. But something that we do is say, hey, across the telemetry that SentinelOne can see, how can we empower your analysts to turn them into super users? So, natural language queries. How can we accelerate threat hunting? How can we provide follow-up queries that you may want to follow? How can we integrate within your workflows? Now, I want to talk about AI and validation. If we're using AI to say, try and understand what's happening to me, and we're chatting to a chatbot about, hey, understand all of this data that I can't wrap my head around, I think we're going to have a challenge of validation. Now, I love this in particular. This is a portrait of Descartes, who's the, I think he's the, I think therefore I am, right? That's Descartes. Yeah. Anyway, Adobe Creative Generator, which is an AI model, when asked to complete the portrait, provided this. There's a clear challenge with AI hallucination on how can I validate the reality of results. But I don't just think that this is a challenge. I think this is an opportunity. Validation is an opportunity that AI can run for us. And I think the opportunity here is especially potent when we're looking at cloud attack paths. Now, for those of you in the room that haven't heard the term attack path, that's when I understand what's the context and correlation of a series of cloud assets and cloud identities, what's the public route, what's misconfigured along the way, or what's not best practice along the way, and what might be vulnerable. The unfortunate reality, though, is that this doesn't represent attack potential. It's an attack path, but it doesn't represent an attack potential. This is a purely theoretical view of your environment, which a lot of security vendors are providing security teams and wasting their time with by saying, hey, here's 300 of these pretty diagrams that you can look at. But I think there's an opportunity here to use AI to validate these attack paths, to say, hey, let's understand this. Can I get some more context? Can I see, with this specific attack path, hey, show me any curl that's been used. Show me wget across the last two weeks with this environment. You know, if it's an Apache Struts vulnerability, let's look for clues. I think we can start piecing together the puzzle pieces here using Gen AI. Something that SentinelOne does is we're taking this opportunity to use AI validation with attack paths specifically, and what we're doing is we're actually building attacks specifically based off of our understanding of an attack path, and then we're running that attack. Now, we've given that AI very strict guidelines on what an attack can and can't look like to ensure that those are always safe attacks, so that it's mostly just call and response style attacks. But in this example of the attack path previously, you can see top, our offensive security engine has generated an attack for this specific environment. I can't scroll through in real time, but if I was to show you what that attack looked like, it's a curl, it's a get, it's pinging this metabase vulnerability, which allows for, it's proving that it allows for server-side request forgery, and then it's pinging IMDS v2, and it's asking for credentials. And crucially there, we're then providing the screenshot. So you can say, hey, I understand the environment, I understand the context, and I can now see the nature of what an attack would work as long as it came from an IP that wasn't blacklisted, and what the result would be. And what we're calling this is we're calling this verified exploit paths so that you can have proof positive of what issues are actually real. Now, I've got to wrap up here, but I think the benefit here is that it's driving three things. What risk is real and requires focus? What would the nature of an exploit actually look like? And it gives you the so what. I think security practitioners are always tired of sending something to a developer and they go, why should I fix this? Here's a screenshot. Here's the so what. And so I think these are three real crucial ways in which you can just bifurcate the time taken to validate, to deconflict, and then to argue as well with the dev team that they should fix something. That's all my time today. I won't talk about the takeaways because hopefully they're self-evident, but I hope everyone has success in their cloud security travels. Thank you for your time. Sorry for going over there.